John Warren, publisher of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, coming to you with our program from the desk of the editor with an open mic format this evening where you can call in or text in if you have questions, comment, or issue you want to raise. The Voice and Viewpoint, as I remind you each week, is San Diego's oldest and only African American adjudicated publication. We've been around here about 65 years, 89 zip codes, 17 cities, unincorporated areas of San Diego County. You can reach us online on our website, or you can download our app in the Google or Apple store. And of course, we have subscriptions. We have single copy sales in retail outlets and newsstands, and you can subscribe to the paper. So we're trying to live up to our motto that a people without a voice cannot be heard, and we are here to make you aware of the fact that you have an outlet. Our slogan on the paper, not only does it say a people without a voice cannot be heard, but it also emphasizes that we are serving San Diego's African and African American communities. And so we're excited, not only doing that, but this partnership we have with Dr. Leonard Thompson III and GOD Radio that allows us to bring this to you. We stream on Facebook. You see us on the app, and we're just here, and we're growing by leaps and bounds by your help and grace, and we appreciate it. Dr. Thompson.
Well, Dr. Warren, it's a good day in the neighborhood when we get together on a Wednesday evening. So much is happening, and I know we have top topics, but I do have to say a special shout out to Coco Gauff, who won the U.S. Open at 19 years old.
All right.
And what I loved about it, she said, this was the first time that I ever saw my dad cry. But a culmination of a family that was working together, that sacrificed. She finally has reached the top of the game, and this really proud of her. And then I almost had to say, this is a little sports thing. Neon Deion Sanders, when they said that what he was doing wasn't going to work, and he went to Colorado, and everybody talked about him, and he went out the first week, and they beat the TSU. Came out the second week and beat Nebraska, and now they gotta give the boy some rank and put him up in the rankings now because he done beat two top programs when they said it would not work. They said his son was not a D1 quarterback, and his son is killing the spot. So I always have to say, if God before you, He's more than the world against you. This is a coach that he's eloquent in his encouragement. He has his own theme music, but when you look at his sleeve, it says JC, and he said that stands for Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And he said, so you have to understand that if God got a plan for you, because they just told him that I think they have to amputate his foot because of diabetes and everything, and everybody thought he would be really depressed and everything, and he's like, I'm just trying to figure out what type of prosthetic or what this happened, everything like that. He said, because God ain't finished with me yet. Yeah. He said, I'm a praying man. So whatever God has in store, if that means I got to do it with a prosthetic foot, he said, I just want the best one. So I just had to do that because, so many people are naysayers. And when you go about doing certain things, people who don't see the vision, because when God gives you a vision, Dr. Warren, somebody probably told you some 60-something years ago, don't you buy that paper. You know what I'm saying? But God gave you and your wife the vision, and thus He gave the provision.
Well, not only when He gives the vision, He does do the provision. And just like you said, at the time that we purchased the paper, all I knew about a newspaper was that you put a coin in a machine and you take it out. Mm-hmm. I had no idea of what was involved, how you do it or whatever, and the rest of it was learning. But I can tell you by His grace that He has never abandoned us in all of the challenges that we had through some almost 40 years now of ownership. And when I look back at it, if someone asked me, if you had a chance to do what you have done in terms of what you've been through, as opposed to someone giving you $1 million to take this business, which would you take? Mm-hmm. And my response is I would take the struggle and the hardship because I learned more from doing it. I saw people who had papers with a lot of money. You might remember that USA did a sports daily at one point, and they spent millions, and they just ended up, after a short period of time, just abandoning that stuff on the street all over the place. It didn't go anywhere. Yeah. And so I'm excited. I am so happy for Coco. I know Serena, the Williams are, And when I hear and look at what she's done, my mind always races back to someone like Arthur Ashe, who
Hmm.
was so alone and such a gentleman in terms of what he was doing and paving the way for blacks in tennis. And so it's just phenomenal in terms of it. And we have this saying that you used to hear it with the songs all during the '60s and the struggles, and you hear the words,
Hmm.
"And the strong keep a coming."
Yeah.
And that's what we have. The strong keep a coming, and we see that they just get better and better.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about it, and Dr. Warren, I appreciate that because I know that you're not a sports guy, but you are a historical guy, and when we see historical things being moved, we love to start off with those kind of statements because a lot of times people overlook, sometimes I feel like when we're confident, it's always seen as cocky. But when other people are confident, it seems like they skilled. And so I think that it's so important that we learn how to celebrate and make sure that that in the end people know the history.
Oh, they have another word for us, Dr. Thompson, other than cocky. If you are confident and assertive, then you are considered aggressive
Yes.
and warlike.
Yeah.
Because those two elements are not supposed to come together in terms of a black male in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah.
So you're always aggressive and you're always threatening
Hmm.
because they can't handle the fact that you can walk, talk, and not have to chew gum to express yourself at the same time. We want
Yeah.
people to know too that you can call in if you like at 858-251-6111. 858-251-6111. And
Yeah.
so, as we move into this evening, there's so much to talk about. I want to start first by acknowledging here 9/11, the 22nd year of remembering the 2,997 people that we lost in terms of that attack on the World Trade Center, the brave souls who died on United Flight 93, crashing the plane into the field so it couldn't reach the Capitol, and the attack on the Pentagon. And so I have an editorial this week that I encourage people to look at online and in print. And the name of the theme for this editorial is America Needs the Spirit of 9/11. America needs the spirit of 9/11. And I say that because when 9/11 occurred, we came together as a nation. We weren't worried about being a Democrat or Republican. We weren't worried about color of skin. We were all in it together in terms of helping each other, looking and loving and trying to make things work. And but for the brave people of Flight 93, United 93, the Capitol probably would have been attacked because we learned later that not only did they have the plans to hit the Capitol, but these people also had a plan for the West Coast.
Hmm.
They had planned to hit San Francisco, to hit the financial district, the Golden Gate Bridge. They were everything that was symbolic of America. That's what they wanted to do, and that's what they wanted to hit. And so I point out that it's a sad contrast that today we're looking 22 years later, and the very capital that the British burnt in 1812, that we kept the terrorists from getting, and on 9/11, we experienced our own people attacking the very place, our own people attacking the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2020. And so this is significant in terms of what took place
Yeah.
because we're no longer cohesively. We now have terrorists among us being grown within us, attacking each other, family, homes, and neighbors, and the whole bit. And I stress in this article that one of the real solutions for us is to turn our attention back to God because I point out that in 1968, when the Kerner Commission, which was the National Advisory Council on Civil Disobedience, uh, did their study, 431 pages, one of the things they said that America was becoming two societies, one black and one white.
Hmm.
And it talked about the breakdown. And so here we are all these years later. It's beyond color. It's philosophical. It's people lying in terms of what's true. And the solution, as I put in the editorial, is found in 2 Chronicles 7:14. in which God speaking says, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, then would they hear from heaven and he would heal the land. That's an abbreviated version of what is said. And so prayer is still the answer for us if we're going to make this happen. And we don't have to wait for every pandemic, flood, tornado, hurricane to decide that we're going to invoke God's blessings, because without living godly as a people, we're really living under judgment. We're no longer living the words that we put on our currency, in God we trust, because now we're trusting in a man who really doesn't deserve to have the trust. And we've moved into the stage of the Antichrist in spirit.
Yeah, and and the thing about it, when we look at where we're at right now, it seems like we're doing a lot of fruitless things. You go now and you look at now they're doing a impeachment inquiry or
On President Biden.
on President Biden.
Yes. And whether or not they should, they want to move in the direction. They promised they were going to impeach him even in the beginning. And the tragedy is that we have such a hatred and such a denial of reality that it's hard to believe that, especially these Republicans who are in office, that these people took an oath when they were sworn in to defend the Constitution of the United States. They have turned their back on their oath of office, and many of them should be put in the same category that states are putting Trump in, when they are saying that based on the 14th Amendment, and anyone who engages in an act of sedition can't run for office. And so he's being eliminated from the ballot in a number of places. And it's a sad commentary that a person could have 90 felonies against them, 4 different law trials in terms of indictment, and still have their numbers go up with people trying to put him back in office.
Yeah. And the funny thing about it is a lot of people want to put him back in office so that he can pardon the people that have been convicted.
That's it.
You know what I'm saying? And the thing that's really sad is I said that he needs to go ahead and call Shaggy up and say, Shaggy, I want to go ahead and pay you for your song, It Wasn't Me. Because it's worse than Read My Lips.
Yeah.
He literally, you caught him on camera, you saw him do it, and yet and still he says it wasn't me. And with that being said, everybody like, I believe him. It wasn't him. He been married 3 times, but it wasn't him that was married all 3 times. It was, a body double.
Oh yeah, and I mean, let's not forget the lawsuits, the rape suits, the allegations of Stormy Daniels. It's like, and it becomes an insult to the Christian community that it turns its back on these things that are so ungodly and so against what we stand for. And why? Just so they could get those 3 judges on the Supreme Court. So their politics to them is more important than any kind of moral commitment that they should have.
Exactly.
And it's sad. But we have something else going on too, Dr. Thompson. Recently we passed an ordinance here that was directed at the homeless. And we talked about it because the school that you worked at before your retirement, it wasn't safe for kids to walk down the street. So we had this ordinance that the city was going to give notices to homeless people. They couldn't be encamped near schools, I guess churches in community areas where there was a threat. But the Ninth Circuit just ruled to block all of that, because the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals just said in a ruling against this scenario that you cannot evict or move these people unless you have appropriate housing for them. And we know that there is no such thing as an abundant supply of appropriate housing to refer the number of people to that we have. We're looking at 16 to 20,000 homeless people in San Diego. In places like Los Angeles, the number is in excess of 60,000. The shelter's not there. Just up the road in Escondido, the city council had to hold a special meeting to see about what they could do. One of their shelters flooded out or something, and they lost the number of beds that they needed to address the population that they had. So these are very serious times. The answer is not really shuffling people around, even though we've opened a couple of sites for parking. And last week I did a piece that was aimed at the idea that the solution to homelessness is a matter of not just putting more money on the table to buy hotels and other buildings, but to deal with the very landlord and developers who are building structures, who are holding people hostage in terms of the rents that they are charging for these structures. And then they are supposedly doing some mixed use. And the mixed use is not enough in and of itself. So one of the things that the Voice and Viewpoint is doing right now, I'm just kind of giving notice. We have a Berkeley fellow that's joined our staff who is working exclusively on looking seriously at the building and permits that have been given out in the past 3 to 5 years, the kind of structures where they were apartments or condos, looking collectively at the amount of vacancies that we have, and because it's not being handled by the Housing Commission, and looking also at the rates that are being charged. Now, they just said this week that for the first time since 2015, rents are beginning to drop, but that's not enough in San Diego because people are still paying for a one-bedroom apartment upwards of $2,500 to $2,700 a month. And if they go for 2 or 3 bedrooms, La Mesa's council member was telling me just recently they've seen some units out there new going for $4,000 a month. Those are the kind of rents that you find in Washington, D.C., which has been totally rebuilt and got all of these units everywhere. And the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., is landlocked. It's landlocked by 10 square miles because it was not intended to be in any state in terms of the nation's capital. And so studios there are costing $2,000 a month. The people here who were covered under the eviction moratorium, who couldn't be evicted, when the moratorium fell, the landlords went full gun for the evictions. Once the eviction shows up on their record, then they can't. Yep. Now they're blacklisted in terms of getting new places.
Yep, credits messed up and
Yep.
everything else. Let me ask you a question. How do we, because in Berkeley they had rent control.
Yes.
How do we get rent control in a place called San Diego, California?
Well, that's a very interesting question. What we just had a few months ago was a piece of legislation called Tenant Protection Ordinance. And it wasn't rent control, but what it did was because so many people were being moved under false pretense of renovation, it started requiring that so much money be given to the people in terms of relocation assistance. But we really haven't had, the last time we had an effort at rent control, Dr. Thompson, was probably about 6 to 8 years ago. There was a Proposition 10 on the ballot. And the thing about Proposition 10 was that it addressed some rent control language from 1995. The reason Proposition 10 became important was because so many people lost their homes during the great collapse of the financial institutions. And so now what happened was that the venture capitalists came in and bought up those homes en bloc, and they rented them back to the people who had lost them. And they realized that in making the rent, they could do better renting the property where they could raise the rents than the old system of buying up the mortgages and holding those. Because all of the mortgages in that first wave of foreclosures was being sold to the Arab Emirates. And so that's why they were taking bodies in places like Vegas and making them sign to get stuff.
Yeah.
And so this is it's just a whole great big thing. And 46% of the people in San Diego County are renters. But I would bet you that of that 40%, that 46%, all of them are not voters.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think it's time again to try to put something on the ballot to get rent control? And what would a good rent control policy be?
Oh, I think very much we need to have rent control on the ballot. I think LA has a system that's similar. We had rent control in DC, and rent control is kind of a tricky thing because it limits the amount of money that can be raised on a unit based on how long. So if you have someone who lived in the unit for 15 years and they move out, there's a limit on how much you can raise the rent on that because people here have seen rent increases of $2, $3, $4, $500
Yeah.
at one time. And so the will has to be there for the rent control. The irony of it is, even when you have landlord-tenant court, and I have observed that some of the judges are landlords. So they're not going to rule against themselves in terms of helping people who find themselves there on all kinds of eviction notices and all kinds of ways of trying to evict them. Most people don't understand that when they have a lease, they have a right to quiet enjoyment, and that if they raise a complaint, there are specific laws against what's called retaliatory evictions in terms of landlord-tenant. So we have a strong tenant organization here that's trying, but it needs to get stronger in terms of what we're dealing with.
So let me ask you this question. So say, for instance, we have these astronomical prices for rent. With rent control, would that require landlords to lower their prices or just control it moving forward?
Well, it can go either way. I think that rent control would probably control how much they can raise the rents in a given year at a given time, and some of that might be to a small degree in the tenant protection ordinance. So that's one of the key elements there controlling it. It also regulates by unit how much the rents can be raised based, as I said, on the longevity. For instance, in Chula Vista, there are places where we have people, and even in Lemon Grove, that have like long-term tenants. They've been in the building maybe 20 years. And a one-bedroom unit they're paying $1,300 for.
Yeah.
So if they move, the restriction in terms of rent control wouldn't allow them to just jump from $1,300 to $2,500 for the new people coming in. And see, right now we also have the 3-day notice to quit. Yeah. So if you are late on your rent and they put that legal notice up there, you either pay up or vacate. Then the next thing you know, they move into the court. So it's all been set up as a short circuit approach to benefit the landlord. When a tenant protection ordinance was being debated before the city council, you would have wondered that the landlords were just being presented like being such victims. I remember one, I was listening to the testimony. He says, when I get a new tenant, I give them a bottle of wine, a box of candy, and a bouquet of flowers to show I appreciate them. Yeah, but you ain't talking about how much you kicking them in the butt with what you're charging them. So this is a serious issue that people have to start looking at before they get to be victims.
Yeah, and the thing comes in is that have our not homeowners, but our landlords created the homeless problem. And if I think that if we look at that, we have to determine how much more we're going to let things be built, but then still pushing people out. And again, are these places that are being built, are they all really being occupied? Are they just holding stations?
No, see, that's the key, and that's what we're looking at with this special investigative piece we're doing. Because many of these buildings, once they build them, if they sit empty, then they can write off at the end of the year what they would have charged in terms of rent. And so it's to their advantage to keep it empty, and they take the position that in time, see, San Diego is catching up with places like D.C. It's going through a renovation. If you see all the new high-rises, 20 and 22 stories tall, I mean, those buildings are not being built for the people that are living down on the ground working. That's not the case. Those are built, and if you look at what happened to Horton Plaza, where the people who bought it gut it, tore it out, and rebuilt it, and it's supposed to be a whole tech universe that's going in there. And so everything is like moving towards Silicon Valley. And
well, I'm questioning it because if they're supposed to be tech, they're taking a whole bunch of time in a long period of time getting it done. I'm like saying, well, how techy are you if it's taking this long? It's been, what, 2-3 years now?
Yeah, but they in no hurry because they got a long-range plan.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, and all the time that even after they get it built, while they're finishing it, they can still write off what's happening in between.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the big part of the problem. And so we are addressing real live issues here. And the unfortunate thing is the people who are the victims are not keeping up. Last year, there was a study came out by the San Diego County Regional Housing Authority that was a special commission they created on black homelessness. And I did stories on this issue because it looks specifically at who the people are that are the service providers, how they're not black, how they're not sensitive, and how all kinds of things are happening with folks. And so the recommendations were to change this. We don't know to what extent it's changed. Money keeps coming down the pike. People keep objecting to it. We just have a lot happening, and the housing crisis is more of a long-term thing because you can't solve it right away.
And you know, the funny thing about it, there be in a way, I think that they should be controlling who's investing in our city, because so many people don't live here. They in different countries, but yet we're selling off so much. And so when they're building, they're only looking at the bottom line. They're not building for the sake of the growth of the community and families and everything else. They build it on the bottom line of profit.
That's what they want. And, you know, they're not building houses. The apartments that they're building, 20, 22 stories, they can house more people with resources and income because you don't have, if you get beyond the city, now you get into the county, and the county has some very specific land use requirements in terms of their master plan that doesn't allow people to just go mess with it, see? And these are some of the questions that should be raised among the two candidates that are running for the fourth supervisorial seat on the Board of Supervisors. And I don't see discussion on these issues, and they need to be discussed.
Well, I think this is real simple as that. For those that are running, you know, we invite you to come out and have that discussion. You know, stop by Biscuits, Grits, and Politics, or right here at GOD Radio 1 from the desk of the editor, and you can call in at any point, and we will have an opportunity to discuss that. Now, we do have one of our listeners on Facebook. She wants to say, what do you guys think about the Black Caucus?
Which Black Caucus?
See, that's the question, because we got the California Black Caucus, we got the National Black Caucus. There's a lot of Black caucuses out there, but let's just go to the national.
Well, to this caller, let me tell you that I was at the first meeting that created the National Congressional Black Caucus. At the time, this was over about 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago. I went to the first 35. In those days, there were only 17 black members in the House of Representatives. There was no Black Caucus Foundation. That came later. The people really turned out in the early days because they saw an opportunity to have some input. The workshops and sessions were very substantive. Today and next week will be the week for the Congressional Black Caucus annual legislative week. And it's amazing. I just finished my tenure on the board of directors of the Newspaper Publishers Association. And every year during the Black Caucus, we do an awards reception and honor several black members of Congress. And I just look at the young people running around there, the folks who come. Some people are serious, but I don't really see the results of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I don't see it. And not only do you have a Black Caucus, now everybody has done a copycat. You got a Latino caucus, and you know, you got an Asian, and you got the progressive. You got all these different groups that have sprung up there. But at the end of the day, we still can't get but so much done in the House because the Republicans control the House, and McCarthy is scared of his own caucus, and so it's a problem. So I'm not excited about it. It's people like to go network, party, be seen, do the Washington thing, and you know, I've had enough of that, so I don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah, and I do apologize. My dyslexia is in full effect today. She wanted to know, what do we think about the Black census?
Oh, the Black census.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know, but we needed the Black Caucus because
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we have a lot going on with the census. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I was in Sacramento for ethnic media program that had the director of the Census Bureau. The Department of Commerce is the agency that houses the U.S. Census Bureau. And we have to look very closely because you will remember that Trump was trying very hard to circumvent the effectiveness of the census. He wanted to cut the time short.
Yep.
He messed with what we were doing during the pandemic. He wanted people, he wanted to make it very clear that the people who were being counted that they had to be citizens. That was different from the 10-year requirement under the Constitution of the census. And so that meant then that if you were not a citizen and you saw somebody knocking at the door, you weren't going to answer it because he kind of made it clear that once I find out you're there, I'm going to send ICE back to get you. And so the census is important. I thank the caller for raising the question. The census is important because what happens is the census looks at all of the country, and it looks at each congressional district, and it looks at the numbers. The number of congressional seats can never go up, so the seats have to be shifted and moved. So with the last census, California lost a seat, Texas lost a seat, and those seats were lost because of population shifts. The census is also important because the number of people counted when the Congress divides up the money that comes in tax revenue, that we see as appropriations. The money goes to places based on a formula that looks at how many people are in the state. So California, Texas, and New York are the states that get a lion's share because of the size of these states and the number of representatives that they have. And so when you lose a seat, then that's a shrinkage in terms of the money going to that, because there's always going to be the 435 or 400,000 people within a congressional district, and the Congress is limited to 435 seats and the Senate to 100. So you've got multiple members of Congress, but only 2 senators from each state, equally dividing the state in terms of coverage. So the census gets to be very important because it's every 10 years it makes a projection, and Trump did his very best to undermine the effectiveness of it, and people of color are the ones who suffer the most in terms of not having an accurate count.
Yeah, and the next time we'll do the census is would be 2030.
That's correct.
2030, and we will see a big shift again there because again people are moving, transitioning, and I think we're going to see a big shift again.
We will see it. And, last time they create commissions within the city, and then they have a commission within the county because they're 2 separate entities. And so I try to work with people at both of those groups. I'm probably one of the few people in California who has lived through and been involved in 6 censuses. Okay, so I mean, for 60 years, I've been involved in keeping up with the census and learning the count and how it's done. For instance, back in the 1970s, we had a full employment program that was based on 4% unemployment, and if that happened, then certain extended unemployment benefits were to kick in. Well, that was based on the census tracts within the census. And within each census area, there are small census tracts of 2,000 people per tract. And so then you add all of that up, and that's how you determine a formula in terms of what you have. And so we didn't participate as fully as we should have. And that meant that we saw some changes, like we saw the question about Mount View and the city and who was going to get, what was going to be the number. And as the districts changed, the people in the City Heights were concerned that they didn't want those people coming into their census tract. So it got to be real racist.
One of the things that one of the callers are saying is she's saying that she's been seeing circulated on Facebook that I've been seeing a survey being shared on Facebook that was created just for Black people. Have you seen anything? I haven't seen that.
No, I haven't. And first of all, let the caller know that you have all kind of polling elements out there, the Gallup poll, the different polls that are known, and they don't have to get permission to conduct counts. Yeah. And it's in these people's benefit because they too work for lobbyists that have money, and they translate what they have into legislative proposals that they take to members of Congress who introduce them just as they are presented.
Yeah.
And that's how we get money controlling what we get.
Yeah.
These are the things we're going to talk about at Biscuit, Grits, and Politics, see, because we're going to talk about politics, and then we're going to talk about the public policy and how the public policy affects the dollars that come at the end of the policy.
So can we transition? I really want to talk about the purpose and the meaning for biscuits, grits, and politics, and why it's so important in this day as we activate and challenge people to get active and activated in their community.
Well, it's a good question, Dr. Thomas and Thompson. And I put, long before I did most of these things, I was a political scientist. And what I have found is that if I look at our communities, most of us don't recognize the power of the words that are used in dealing with us. When we think of public policy, we don't know that public policy is what leads to laws being made that determine how money is spent. And most of us get involved at the tail end of it when we should be involved at the front end. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I try to make clear is how this process starts. I take you from interest groups to pressure groups to the policy and how all of that works. And now that gets to be important. We've seen a little bit of it here, for instance, in the recent passage of the Commission on Police Practices. It went through a long process to get it, but now we have it. It has some teeth to it, subpoena power, its own legal counsel, but it took a long time and a lot of people discussion. So that's why this is so important, this biscuit, grits, and politics, because we're going to talk about, Mitch Mitchell is going to talk about the impact of polls like the one you just looked, the Black Census, and they're giving an idea of who's going to vote. They're preparing right now for next year.
Yeah.
For the presidential election. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Okay? And I was on a conference call with the governor yesterday, and people were raising questions about, we want to make sure that you're going to commit to appointing Barbara Lee if Dianne Feinstein steps down to the Senate. And then the governor is saying, well, I started, it was a hypothetical, it was 2 years ago, but now we have a situation where in 5 months, we'll have the California primary, 6 months really, in March of 2024. And so most people would be very unhappy if something happened to Dianne and I tried to make an appointment with the primary itself so close. Well, that plays to the benefit of people like Adam Schiff and other white folks that want to run. And it plays against the interests of black folks who want to make sure that we have a black female in there to replace Kamala Harris, and Barbara Lee is the choice. And so we had people doing stupid stuff like talking about it should be Oprah Winfrey or what. This is not a game, folks. This is not a popularity contest. This is serious business. And most of us who are pushing for Barbara Lee are doing so because this sister has been on the battlefield for I can count back 40 years, almost 50 years. She and I worked together on the Hill when we were in our youth, when she was chief of staff to Ron Dellums. She went on to the legislature. She went to the assembly, to the Senate. She was one of the people who created the legislative black caucus in the Senate. She went on and chaired the Congressional Black Caucus during her time on the Hill. And so she's paid her dues. And now some people are trying to question in terms of age. Well, she's in her 70s. She's not Dianne. You know what we say about us. We say we don't crack, and we're still strong and cognizant. And so these are issues that we're dealing with. It all comes back to public policy. It all comes back to personal involvement and how we are swayed through campaigns to influence what we think and what we do.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things is that we also have to be very strategic in this season to consistently have successorships already in place, because the bottom line is that age is just a number, because you can leave this world at any time that God says, okay, job, you're done, come on home, and it could be done. You could be 10 years old, you could be 100 years old. But when you're in position, the key thing is making sure that you have good successors, not successors just because they were loyal, but successors that are capable, willing, and connected to the communities that they serve. Because the reality comes in is that just because you are a chief of staff or you are a community rep, if you never really truly connected with the community, that the community can literally lean on you and say, if that job comes available, that's who we want.
But see, Dr. Thompson, the reality is what you just described rarely ever happens. The replacements are not done based on the interests of the community. Unfortunately, it's based on the politics of who can we put in. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, one of the key things in The Prince was the idea that if you're going to be successful, you should always maintain your connections with the grassroots community. And so many people get elected and they get so caught up with the powers to be and the money that supports their reelection that they lose their foundation. And when they lose their foundation, then it's easier to replace them. So these are part of the issues that we're going to be dealing with as we do Biscuit Grits in Politics. We're going to have open mic where people can really ask questions. It's an environment in which there is no stupid question. All questions are important because if one person has a question, then other people have a question. And we need to pay attention because I don't know how many of us do, but if you ever, I watch Hispanic television often, okay? And one of the things I've noticed in watching TV, it helps me kind of work on my language skills, is that they used to have these ads on a regular basis for citizenship packages. I remember it used to be like $75 buy a citizenship package. The package help you understand the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, how the Congress works, who the people are. And by the time these people hold up their hand for citizenship, number one, they're glad to have a chance to be a citizen. Number two, they're going to vote.
Yeah.
Okay? There's no question that they're going to vote. And so we need to understand what motivates them to vote because some people want to lump all folks together, which is a mistake. For instance, if you look at the Latino vote, the Latino people in Florida and Miami who come from Cuba, they have a almost white-leaning conservative attitude, as opposed to Latinos that might come from Texas or California, come across the border, and they are the workers. And the census tracks the whites, the Latinos, in two categories. Most people don't notice. It says white Latinos and non-white Latinos. There's no other group of people that are subdivided by color that way in terms of the census.
Well, I'm going to ask the question. I'm just going to ask the question. And maybe you can help me out on this because you're a statistician and how in the world in Texas with all the black and Mexican folks down there that we still be getting those governors?
It's very simple, Dr. Thompson. Some years ago, and the rest of the country is just catching up, the Republicans in the country created an algorithm that allowed them to understand how they could gerrymander districts so that at the end of the day, I'll make it clear by using this example. We have a district for the Board of Supervisors that used to be all East County, okay? Diane, what's her name, head district?
Jacobs.
Diane Jacobs, okay. And so if you were in Diane Jacobs' district, the power with the district went out to East County, Jamul, El Cajon, Del Cerro, all of those places extended out there. Well, what they did was they took places like Spring Valley or Lemon Grove, who were receiving more blacks moving east because they couldn't afford to still live westward in terms of San Diego's development. And once they did that, no matter how much hell those people wanted to raise, they would always be outvoted by that larger group of white folks from that rural area that they were just put into. We saw the same thing play out in Alabama recently, where the Supreme Court threw out their district division and said you need to redraw these boundaries because you have 7 congressional seats. You only have 1 black and there should be 2. And what they did, this is a trick that was run on us. The Supreme Court, people were surprised, like the Supreme Court really sided with the people in terms of doing this, making them give another seat to black folks. Maybe there's some hope. No, you missed the underlying thing. They knew that the legislature in Alabama was going to reject what the court did they were going to redraw their boundaries and they were going to refile in court to get it done. And the end result was that that section of the Voting Rights Act, which had not been challenged when they outlawed it back in 2013, that was going to come up there so that they could completely gut it. Wow. So they got long-range plans, and the Republicans have done this so well around the country that they're controlling. That's why they control the Texas legislature. Yeah. Remember the people in Texas, the Democrats left town, came to Washington, did all kinds of stuff. They had to come back, and they still passed what they needed. Voter suppression, removing ballot boxes, limiting where they can vote. The same thing was done in Georgia. All of this is a handful of white people saying, our way of life is at risk, and we want to change it.
Yeah, I think it's that, but I also think that you have some wayward people of color, that are buying into that, and they're becoming just as culturally racist as the people that that they think they're friends with, and they think that it's going to benefit them. The bottom line is simply this: if we do not get active, if we do not stay well read, if we do not get involved, then we cannot complain when these things happen. And let me just say this, Doc.
Yes.
It's really simple. If you want to know what's going on, especially in the city of San Diego and even internationally or nationally, pick up The Voice and Viewpoint. You know what I'm saying? Because there's going to be so many topics that are going to be discussed there that you won't hear about in the regular news media. No. You know what I'm saying? That's number one. So one, you have to have good resources. Number two is you cannot be spoon-fed. Number three, you're going to have to give up some of your personal time to be able to get involved, because the bottom line is this: I'm going to live for today, and we forget about these young people for tomorrow, then our kids will not have the same life that people sacrificed for us to have and gave up life and time and energy so that we can live this life. We have to still do the same for the next generation. The battle is not over. The revolution is being televised, and we are being, in the revolution, we are watching instead of being a part.
You are so right, Dr. Thompson. And what you see, for instance, with Black Men and Women United, which we have done since 2005 and kept it very active. We meet once a week, and you notice that whenever issues come up and we talk about creating a committee to look at doing something, that's where it stops. Nobody volunteers to do a committee. Nobody comes back because they don't get it. They just think, well, I don't have time, and people have been so spoiled with looking out for themselves in San Diego that they don't want to give up the time. When you go back east to places like Georgia, Chicago, and Atlanta, and D.C., and you will find that there's a two-tier governmental structure. There are committees and community organizations that meet and work at night, and they influence what happens in the day. Yeah. Out here, when the sun sets at 5 o'clock, everybody wants to close their desks, cut out the light, and we'll pick it up tomorrow. Yeah. And they don't want nothing to interfere with their social. When I first came here, and I was working as a law clerk for the county, and I'm all serious about what I'm doing, and no matter how pressing it was, when the clock struck 5, it was almost like a factory whistle. They come and say, hey, we out of here. Cut out the lights. We gone tomorrow. Everybody's got to get to what they're doing. That's the problem. We don't have the commitment. And when people come here, Black people I've noticed when they come here, they're hungry, they're struggling, they want to get involved, they want to learn. Once they get that house and 2 cars, or they buy that second property, they come out for Kwanzaa, and they come out for Juneteenth. And they are involved basically in between.
And one of the things, and I always tell people that, and then we have to take responsibility for those people that we allow just to do that. I say now there's always going to be that challenge and Dr. Well, I'm just being honest. I've been challenged, in my older age, same way as I was challenged in my younger age. What are you going to do? Let's not just sit back and rest on the laurels of degrees or position. You got to do the work. And I think that that's what we have to now come back to is like when people say, well, this should be this way, this should be this way. We got to say, okay, and so how are you active? What are you involved in? Okay, you can't go in the middle of the day, so we will go ahead and make some transition take all the excuses away from them. Just like biscuits, grits, and politics. You know what I'm saying? We've taken excuses away from everybody because we went around. You know, Dr. Warren, one thing I love about the Voice and Viewpoint, they do their research.
Yes.
And we found out that the breakfast that we are serving, you cannot get that breakfast anywhere in town for under $30.
You certainly can't. And when we say serving, for those who don't know, we got the catfish nuggets, we got the grits, we got the soft scrambled eggs, we got the biscuits, we got turkey sausage, and we got bacon, coffee, and tea. Okay, $20. You can't beat it.
Yeah.
And then we got the good conversation, the time to interact and fellowship and get to know folks. You know, the last time we had catfish on the agenda was when we had the Catfish Club.
Yeah.
Before it went away.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a networking opportunity. It's not just to sit and eat. There are high-profile people that are coming to all the biscuits, grits,
Yes.
and politics, not only on stage but also in the room for you to network with. There are people that you have questions that you wanted to meet. They will be in the room. There are some employers that are going to come in looking for people to engage in new things. So this is going to be the new energy that we're going to continue to bring, and we challenge people. If you want to hear a discussion, you want to have us have a discussion about something, say something. Don't just sit back and say, well, why don't they talk about this? Say something, and we can get it on the agenda.
Well, that's important too, because like next month is the month before the election, the special election runoff. We are going to be discussing the issues, and the candidates, if they choose to come, will be there. In addition to next month is we're going to deal with the whole issue of Stop the Hate. And we have groups that are being involved that haven't been at the table before. Mm-hmm. So we're doing this, and we're going to do this every month. We have a Tuesday pick out for biscuit, grits, and politics for the numbers to grow in terms of people being there and receiving suggestions and ideas.
So Dr. Warren, some people that are in different states said, I wish I could be there. Well, we hit our numbers in people that are coming, so you can be there because we are going to be streaming it live on GOD Radio as well as on the Voice and Viewpoint page. So you are going to be able to tune in. You are going to be able to see it live. And here's the thing, Dr. Warren, I'm just going to say it like this. We're trying to outdo the numbers on streaming. Then we know we'll get 150, 200 people present. We want to see if we could get 2,000 or 3,000 people on the streaming platforms tapping in, and this is to motivate you to get active in your community too. Don't just sit back and just glean information. Begin to ask yourself, how can I do that? And for one of my good friends, you cannot Uber Eats the biscuits, grits, and politics. You have to be present.
Yes, you do have to be present, and we want to encourage people to be present and not to shortcut. You know, during the pandemic, we've had to do Black Men and Women United on Zoom. We'll continue to do that because it gives so many people a chance to participate. But this is the first time we have a chance to come out and reconnect in person. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so that's key.
Talk about the 6.
Yes. Oh, I forgot to mention that what we've done as a safeguard is we only have 6 people to a table. The tables are designed to hold 10. We've got 6. We got the table spread. This is the same place we hold a gala where we have 400 and 500 people. Yeah. This is we're doing 100 and just a few things over, so we have space to make it a safe environment. Mm-hmm. We don't need people showing up on Tuesday morning at 6:30. If there are a couple of seats left that haven't been actually filled or people gave back to us, then we would allow the purchase of those. Mm-hmm. But once you go on Eventbrite, or you can come to the office, or you can call the office and register by phone or credit card. We're open tomorrow from 9 to 3:30 or 4. Friday, we're only open from 9 to 12, and then Monday from 9 to 3:30 or 4. And after that, you will miss it. Yeah, you can see it, but I mean, gee whiz, where else can you go? And if you enjoy Jazz at the Creek, and the food that you had there, those are the same people that are fixing the food for Biscuit, Grits, and Politics. Dr. Thompson and I, we already did the sample. It was off the chain. Yeah. And they were trying to add so many foods, we had to hold them back.
And here's the thing, Dr. Warren, this is just really simple. the reason why you hear so much passion is that we don't want you to be left behind. A lot of times what happens is people wait to the last moment and be like, I want to be in the house, and then they get upset when they come and we say there's no more room in the inn. This is the biggest thing about what we're doing. We're saying we're planning in advance. And it is just like, it's always really funny because, there was an event just recently where Karen Bass and Miss Mayor London and all these folks was in. And everyone said, well, I didn't know about it. That's because you're not engaged.
Yeah.
Because if you were engaged, you would have known it because you would have been on somebody's list to
And
get email.
it was a phenomenal event last Friday at Secretary Weber's home. She had Karen Bass, London Breeze, Todd Gloria, and we had all of these mayors right there with the Secretary of State, with the State Assembly representative. It was a power gathering of influential black women in the state of California, all in one place. And it happened because the people were here in town for a meeting of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and Secretary Weber used the opportunity to have an event in honor of London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, who we know is going to have a big battle. Karen Bass was identified as the new kid on the block because she's just been in office 9 months.
Yeah.
And of course, Todd Gloria worked with London and with Karen when he was in the legislature. And so it was a great occasion. But it's almost like a lottery. If you don't have a ticket, you can't play. If you're not in the room, you can't have a comment.
Yeah. And last but not least, I want to encourage you all, invite your college age students out. Invite young people to connect them with more of their elders so that they will have the ability to connect with people and sit at tables that they normally are not invited to. That was my claim to fame, Dr. Warren, is that people like yourself and my uncle, they always kept me at the table with the senior elders. So as I grew, I knew how to navigate and go and talk to people to get things done. And so with that being said, you are, again, leading the charge to bring a beacon back to our city. And this is Biscuits, Grits, and Politics. So kudos to you and the Voice and Viewpoint. And this is a pleasure to serve with you.
Well, we enjoy having this, and we encourage those who are coming. If your name is on the list to come, do show up, please, and not waste it. And we're telling people we are open the door at 6:30, 6:45. We want to be ready to start serving those grits because we don't want them to get cold. And when you get them, we want you to be able to jump into it. And so we're not going to be trying to talk to you while you're eating. We're going to give you time to really get that down. And we're going to do everything except give you a toothpick.
Yeah. And last but not least, because we are definitely wanting you to come for the networking, but I also want you to be able to meet some key players, especially with the Voice and Viewpoint. New staff will be there. The time is from 7 to 9 so that you can go back to your places of employment and do what you have to do. But there are key people that we want people to know who is there in the room. And so that's what this is all about. And at the end of the day, I guarantee you will walk away with connections as well as resources that's going to help move the agenda.
So remind them it's from 7 to 9 a.m.,
Yep.
September 19th, next Tuesday. Come at least 6:45 so you can get in there.
Yeah.
And we're going to be out by 9, and we're going to get you seated, and we're going to get you served. We're going to feed the body and the spirit, and we're looking forward to your being there.
And with that said, this is from the desk of the editor with Dr. John Warren. It's been a pleasure being with you tonight. God say the same. We'll see you next week with a recap from Biscuits, Grits, and Politics. God bless you.
I was trying to